The evening sun leaned low across the sky, spilling its last warmth through the small window of the old wooden house. Dust floated in the light, tiny dancers caught in the air, spinning silently in the golden glow. The room smelled faintly of old wood, of tea leaves long steeped, of earth and time itself. Anna sat in her usual chair by the window, her frail frame wrapped in a shawl the color of faded plum. Her hands rested on her lap, hands knotted with veins, folded with wrinkles, yet still steady when they reached for the small fingers of the girl beside her. Lila's hand was so small, so smooth, almost like a bird resting in her palm. The child looked up at her grandmother with wide eyes that caught the light like polished stones. There was a hunger in those eyes, not for bread or sweets, but for stories, for the secrets that lived in the lines of Anna's face, in the depths of her soft, tired gaze. "Grandma," Lila whispered, her voice timid in the stillness, "will you tell me a story tonight?" Anna smiled faintly. It was not a smile of amusement, but of memory. Her lips curved, though her eyes darkened with something else. Something old, heavy, but softened by love. "My little bird," she said, brushing a wisp of hair from the child's cheek. "My whole life has been a story. Some parts are heavy. Some parts still ache when I breathe them aloud. But if you wish to hear, I will open the doors of the past." Lila nodded eagerly, scooting closer until her knees touched Anna's, her small hand tightening around her grandmother's. "I want to hear it," she said. "Even the sad parts." Anna drew a long breath. Her gaze wandered to the window, where the last of the sunlight painted the walls with long shadows. The light always carried her backward, back to mornings of hunger, to nights of fear, to the sound of boots on gravel and the hollow silence that followed loss. "Then list, Anna murmured, her voice both fragile and strong, like a thread spun of silk and iron. "Because what I will tell you is not just my life, but the reason you are here, safe and warm tonight." She closed her eyes, and the room around them began to dissolve into memory. When Anna opened her eyes again, she was no longer an old woman in a wooden chair. She was a girl no older than her granddaughter now, standing barefoot in a field soaked with rain. The sky was grey, the earth beneath her feet cold and sucking at her ankles. Her dress clung to her skin, patched and thin. In her hands, she clutched a basket, nearly empty save for a few shriveled roots. Her stomach ached with hunger. But it was not herself she thought of. Beside her stood a boy, thin as a reed, his face pale, his ribs pressing through his shirt. His eyes were too big for his face, eyes that trusted her even when the world gave them no reason to trust anything at all. That was her brother, Matteo, her little shadow, her reason for walking when her legs begged to collapse. "I was not much older than you, Lila," Anna said aloud, her voice weaving the memory into the present. "The world had already taken much from me. My father was gone to war, my mother taken by sickness. It was only me and Matteo, and I swore I would not let the world take him too." The image of her younger self bent down in the rain, pulling the last crust of bread from her pocket. Her own lips were cracked with thirst, her stomach hollow, yet she placed the crust into Matteo's trembling hands. He ate slowly, his eyes fixed on her face with devotion she could hardly bear. She stroked his hair, pretending she was not hungry, pretending she was strong enough for both of them. "Did you ever give food?" Lila's soft voice broke into the vision. She was staring at her grandmother's face, her eyes wet, as though she could see the rai and the hunger herself. "Sometimes," Anna replied. Her thumb brushed the back of the child's hand, steadying her. "But many times there was none. We learned to live on very little, on hope, and on..." The night after her first story, the air was cool inside the small wooden house. A lantern flickered on the table, its flame painting soft shapes on the walls. Outside, cicadas hummed like a hidden choir. Lila curled up beside her grandmother again, her head nestled against Anna's side. Anna held her in silence for a while, her old hands smoothing the child's hair. She could feel Lila's heartbeat, soft and quick like a sparrow's. For Anna, holding her granddaughter was both comfort and reminder. Life had gone on despite everything. "Tell me more, Grandma," Lila whispered at last. Anna drew a long breath. Her chest rose and fell like a tide, preparing to bring in the storm. She looked toward the lantern flame, and the shadows it cast began to stir her memories. "Very well, little bird," she murmured. "But tonight's story is heavier. It is the night the road changed everything." The memory pulled her backward. The lantern glow became the dim grey dawn of another lifetime. Anna saw herself again, only a little older now, 14 perhaps, walking down a dirt road with Matteo. Their shoes were worn through, their feet blistered and sore. On her back, Anna carried a small bundle wrapped in cloth, a shirt, a comb, and a loaf of stale bread. All they owned. The world behind them had turned to silence. Their small village was no more. Fields stripped, homes burned, neighbors scattered or gone. "I had no choice but to leave." Anna's voice carried softly into the present. The land that raised us could no longer feed us, and staying meant death. So I took Matteo's hand, and we walked. She could see it so clearly. Matteo's small hand in hers, his thin legs stumbling but never letting go. The road stretched endlessly before them, winding between forests and hills, each step heavier than the last. For days they walked. Their bread ran out quickly. Hunger returned, crueler than before, worry gnawing at their ribs. Sometimes Anna would pretend to find berries by the roadside, pretending not to notice how sour they tasted, or how little they filled their bellies. "But Grandma," Lila interrupted softly, her eyes wide. "Weren't you afraid? The world must have been so big. And you were so little." Anna smiled faintly, though her eyes were distant. "Yes, little one. I was afraid every moment. The trees seemed taller, the nights colder, the silence heavier. But when I looked at Matteo's face, when I saw the trust in his eyes, I knew I had to keep walking. Sometimes love is stronger than fear. On the 4th night, it rained. The heavens opened, spilling water in sheets that drenched their clothes and turned the dirt road into a river of mud. They huddled beneath a tree, shivering, their arms wrapped around each other. Anna remembered how she whispered stories into Matteo's ear, stories of warm bread, of their mother's lullabies, of a home they might someday build. She lied gently, weaving dreams into his mind so the storm would not crush him. My words were all I had, Anna whispered now, glancing down at Lila. Stories can be blankets too, when the cold tries to take you. Lila's fingers clutched her grandmother's shawl tighter, as though she could feel that storm. Then came the road of shadows. Anna and Matteo stumbled upon a small camp of people, wanderers like themselves. A fire glowed in the distance, and the smell of soup drifted toward them. Hope sparked in their hollow stomachs. Anna hesitated, clutching her brother's hand, but hunger pushed them forward. Around the fire sat weary faces, mothers with hollow cheeks, children with eyes too old, men whose voices were low with despair. A woman with grey hair ladled thin broth into wooden bowls. She saw Anna and Matteo and motioned for them to come closer. For a moment, Anna thought they had found kindness. She lowered herself beside the fire, pulled Matteo into her lap, and accepted a bowl of soup. It was the first warm thing we had tasted in weeks. Anna's voice trembled with memory. But even kindness can be fragile. The sound of boots came. Soldiers again. Their shadows stretched tall in the firelight. The camp fell silent. One by one, the bowls were set down, hands raised in trembling surrender. Anna clutched Matteo to her chest, her heart pounding so loudly she thought the soldiers might hear it. She remembered the glint of rifles, the rough voices demanding names, demanding loyalties. She remembered how one man was struck to the ground, how another begged for mercy. She remembered the firelight in the soldier's eyes, cold, merciless. And she remembered the woman with the grey hair, who leaned close to her and whispered, "Run, child. Take him and run." So she did. She grabbed Matteo's hand and ran into the trees, the darkness swallowing them whole. Behind them, shouts rang out. Gunfire split the night. The smell of smoke and fear chased them through the branches. Anna's breath tore through her lungs as she dragged Matteo forward, stumbling, falling, rising again. His small cries pierced her heart, but she did not stop. She could not stop. When at last they collapsed against a fallen tree, miles from the road, silence wrapped them like a shroud. The fire was far behind. The cries of the others were gone. Only the forest remained, heavy and still. "I thought we were safe," Anna whispered into the present, her voice trembling. But safety is a word I did not know then. Safety was a dream too fragile to hold. Lila's eyes shone with tears. She pressed her cheek into her grandmother's arm. "What happened to the others?" she asked. Her voice barely more than a breath. Anna closed her eyes. The memory pressed hard against her. "I never saw them again. Sometimes I still hear the echoes. But we kept walking, because we had no choice. The forest gave them no welcome. For days they wandered, lost among trees that seemed endless. Their stomachs ached, their lips cracked. Anna carried Matteo when his legs gave out, though her own knees buckled with every step. One evening, as the sun bled red through the branches, Anna fell to her knees. Matteo's weight in her arms was heavy, his body weak, his breaths shallow. She laid him on the ground and wept, silently, so he would not hear. "I was only a girl," Anna said aloud, her voice breaking, but in that moment, I felt 1,000 years old. I thought I had failed him. I thought it would end there. But then, through her tears, she saw it. A small wildflower blooming between roots. Yellow, bright against the darkness. A stubborn spark of life, where none should be. Anna picked it and pressed it into Matteo's hand. "Look," she whispered, "the earth still grows. We can still grow too." And somehow he smiled. A weak, fragile smile, but enough to keep walking. Enough to remind her that even the smallest light can guide you through shadows. Anna's voice faded into the room. The lantern flickered low. Lila was silent. Her little heart caught between sorrow and awe. She lifted her grandmother's hand and pressed it against her cheek. "You saved him?" she said, as though it were the most important truth in the world. Anna's lips trembled with both pain and pride. "I tried, little bird. Every day I tried." She looked into her granddaughter's eyes, so full of innocence and wonder, and felt both the weight of the past and the miracle of the present. "That was only the beginning," Anna whispered. The road was long, and before the light, there was still much darkness to walk through. The flame in the lantern wavered, then steadied. The shadows on the walls grew taller, like old memories still waiting to be told. The rain had stopped by the time Anna's story began again. Outside the small wooden house, the night was heavy and still. Lila leaned against her grandmother's arm, her eyelids heavy, yet her ears hungry for more. The lantern flickered, its glow making Anna's face look like both a shadowed ruin and a holy painting. "You left the road," Lila whispered. Half a question, half a dream. Anna nodded slowly. "Yes, into the forest, where the trees grew so close together, I thought the sky had forgotten us. But it was there, among roots and silence, that we found something unexpected." Her voice carried the memory back, and once again the years dissolved around her. The forest stretched on for days, endless and suffocating. Anna's legs ached, her stomach clawed with hunger, and her brother's small hand often slipped limp in her grasp. Yet somehow they kept moving, one slow step at a time. Then, on the 7th day, Anna saw smoke curling between the trees. At first her heart leapt in terror. Smoke meant soldiers, soldiers meant death. But Matteo tugged at her sleeve, his weak voice barely a whisper. Maybe food. So she followed it, clutching him close. They stumbled into a clearing where a small wooden cottage leaned beneath the weight of age. Its roof sagged, its walls were patched with moss, yet smoke drifted gently from the chimney. The smell of bread hung in the air. Anna remembered the way her knees nearly gave out at the scent. She lifted her hand and knocked on the crooked door. It opened slowly. An old man stood there, his beard white as frost, his eyes cautious but kind. He looked at the children for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in," he said. Inside, the cottage was warm, dimly lit by the glow of a fire. The old man's wife, a woman bent with years, placed a bowl of broth in front of them. Anna had to restrain herself from devouring it too quickly. She broke pieces for Matteo first, watching him eat before she touched her own. For the first time in weeks, Anna felt her shoulders loosen. The walls of the cottage seemed to breathe around them, whispering, "You may rest here." The man's name was Elias, Anna murmured, her eyes far away. And his wife was Maren. They had lost their own children long before. Perhaps that is why they opened their door to us. The days that followed felt like stolen sunlight. Elias showed Matteo how to chop wood. Maren taught Anna how to mend clothes, how to stir soup so it did not burn. At night, they sat by the fire, and for a brief time, Anna almost believed they had found a family again. But Grandma, Lila whispered, that sounds happy. Anna smiled sadly. It was. And happiness, my little bird, can be the most fragile thing of all. It happened suddenly, like a candle blown out by a cruel hand. One morning, Elias did not rise from his bed. His chest rattled with each breath, his skin hot with fever. Maren wept quietly as she wiped his brow, whispering prayers into the air. Anna fetched water, gathered herbs, did all she could, but the sickness was stronger. Within days, Elias's breaths grew shallow, then stopped. The cottage fell silent, the fire guttering low. I had seen death before, Anna whispered, her fingers tightening around Lila's. But never like that. Never in a place that had felt safe. Maren's grief was bottomless. She sat by the cold bed, rocking herself, her voice breaking in endless murmurs. Her frail body could not bear the weight of sorrow. Within a week, she too was gone, her hand still clutching her husband's. The cottage became a house of ashes. The warmth that had cradled them vanished. Anna buried Elias and Maren beneath the roots of an old oak tree. She pressed Matteo's hand into hers as they stood in the damp earth, the two graves before them. I didn't know the words to say, Anna told her granddaughter. I was only a girl, but I whispered a promise that their kindness would not be forgotten, that we would carry it with us, even when the world turned cold again. For a few more days, Anna and Matteo stayed in the cottage. They ate what little food was left, wore the patched clothes Maren had mended. But the walls that once whispered safety now only echoed with absence. One night, Anna woke to the sound of Matteo crying softly in his sleep. His thin shoulders shook as he clutched the blanket. She wrapped her arms around him, her own tears soaking into his hair. I will not let the world take you, she whispered fiercely into the dark, even if it takes everything else. And in that moment, Anna felt something shift inside her. She was no longer only a sister. She was mother, father, protector, all at once. Childhood had slipped away without her noticing. Anna's voice broke in the telling. Her old eyes glistened with tears that did not fall. Lila held her hand tightly, as though to anchor her back in the present. Grandma, she whispered. That must have been so hard. But you were brave. Anna shook her head softly. Brave? No, little bird. I was only desperate. But sometimes desperation makes us strong in ways we never imagine. The lantern flame fluttered, as though stirred by her words. Shadows deepened along the walls. That was the day I began to change, Anna said quietly. The day I understood that love is both blessing and burden. That to protect someone you must be willing to lose everything else. She looked at Lila, her voice trembling with both pain and pride. It was not the end of our journey. It was only the beginning. But the house of ashes, It stayed with me always,